If you've seen Thor Ragnarok and thought Korg's line about 3 vampires being huddled together was a little bit random, may I present to you the answer. Let's start the show! Hello everyone, happy Halloween or November, and welcome to another Rewind review. Yeah, sorry I'm a little late with this one. In this video I am taking a look at one of my favourite movies to put on around about this time of year, and that is What We Do in the Shadows. Released in 2014, this mockumentary, written, directed and starring Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, follows vampires Viago, Deacon, Vladislav and Peter, who are struggling with the mundane aspects of modern life, like paying rent, keeping up with their chore wheel, trying to get into nightclubs, and overcoming flatmate conflicts. The movie also stars Johnny Brew, Ben Fransham, Stu Rutherford, Jackie Van Beek, Corey Gonzalez-McCure, and Eleanor Stako. I think it goes without saying that I absolutely love this movie. I can't remember if I saw this before or after Thor Ragnarok, but I do remember when all the reviews for Ragnarok were coming out, that this movie, Hunt for the Wilder People and Flight of the Conchords were getting mentioned a lot. I think it was after Ragnarok, to be honest. So I was aware of this movie around about the time that Ragnarok was getting released, but I stupidly didn't seek it out. And then, I think it must have been October 2017, thereabouts, it was on really late at night on BBC Two, and I decided, you know what, I really want to see this, and I gave it a go. I had to set my recorder for it because of how late in the night it was, but I watched it the following day, and I don't think I've actually done this in a very long time, but this is one of those movies that when I first saw it, I had to watch it again. And when I say again, I do mean on the exact same day. I thought this was one of the funniest and most entertaining films that I had ever seen, and it's become a go-to Halloween movie ever since. And I will happily say that even though I was rewatching this movie for the purposes of this video, it is still just as funny and entertaining as it was the first time I watched it. What We Do in the Shadows is a mockumentary-styled movie that focuses on the mundane and everyday lives of a group of vampires that live together in New Zealand. It follows the ups and downs, the highs and lows, and the struggles and dangers of being a vampire in the modern world, albeit through a very fun and comedic lens. And it's bloody funny. I made that pun for my Shaun of the Dead video and I'm still proud of it. Anyway, it's very similar to other mockumentary movies and TV shows like This Is Spinal Tap and The Office, where you basically see a series of events or different things that are happening, and it's all intercut with interviews with the characters and voiceovers, just like a real documentary would. I have seen some complaints and criticisms about the cinematography and the overall lack of story in this movie, and that kind of baffles me a little bit. It's meant to look and feel like a documentary, and it absolutely succeeds. From the handheld, shaky cam-like cinematography that features a lot of zooms and focus pulling, to the use of natural lighting mixed with a single camera light for night sequences, this does legitimately feel like a documentary, complete with stock footage, archival pictures and paintings of the characters, which look great, and it's loaded with cutaways, fourth wall breaks, narrations, and interviews with each of the characters. There is probably some things that they could either add into this or expand on, but I do think that what they've done in this movie is really good, and they do take full advantage of the idea and premise. It's genuinely brilliant, and how it mixes together with the horror genre is really well done and very clever. I actually wasn't aware of this until I was researching this movie, but apparently back in 2005, Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi, the creators of this movie, actually developed a short film, it's only about half an hour long, that formed the basis of this movie. That short is called What We Do in the Shadows, Interviews with Some Vampires. I believe the whole thing is available to watch on YouTube. I do need to see it for myself because it is basically the origin of not only this story but these characters. It's even got the exact same cast as well. Anyway, when it comes to the characters, especially the main ones, they are brilliant, they are funny, and they are very well realised. They're instantly likeable, all very distinct from each other, and get some great moments to shine, and the performances from each of the actors involved are very good and very believable. There's this amazing chemistry between them all, especially the main three, Taika Waititi, Jermaine Clement and Johnny Brew, who all bring a unique quality and sense of deadpan humour to the movie. I love how much of this movie is improvised, even though it's not always the wisest thing to do, but it does help the conversations and arguments feel a little bit more real. Performances throughout this are kept fairly grounded, especially from Corey Gonzalez-McCure as the newly turned vampire Nick, the police officers Karen O'Leary and Mike Minogue, the werewolves led by Rhys Darby, the beast played by Eleanor Stako, and everyone's best friend Stu played by Stu Rutherford. I really like what Ben Fransham does as Peter, who is basically like this really laid back and silent version of Nosferatu, and I also really enjoy Jackie Van Beek as Deacon's increasingly exasperated familiar. I've only just found this out quite recently, but apparently the two police officers that appear in this movie actually had their own TV spin-off series in 2018 called Wellington Paranormal. I haven't seen the series, as I said, I didn't even know it existed until quite recently, but I would like like to see it. The characters were quite fun and I do like the look of it so far. In all honesty, I think a movie or a TV series that focuses on a vampire familiar, whether that's Jackie or a brand new character altogether, could be really fun. That is definitely one of the funniest subplots in this movie. Anyway, I really love the cast and the performances that each of them give. I think that everyone in this movie is perfect for their roles. One other thing that I do like about the characters are their designs and overall look, because they all have a style that's very unique to each character, helps inform on their backstories, and each harkens back to a different interpretation of vampires. Vladislav is very clearly inspired by Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Deacon, I think, was inspired by The Lost Boys. I mean, he does do the worm trick, so it is likely. Peter is 100% influenced by Nosferatu, and Viago, I want to say is Interview with the Vampire, but I could be wrong. This is absolutely loaded with jokes and references to all manner of vampires across pop culture, from Blade and Salem's Lot all the way through to things like Twilight. The jab at Twilight in this movie I don't think is as funny as the one from Hotel Transylvania, but I did think that it was a good one. This manages to find a way of blurring all kinds of vampire clichés and stories together in a really fun way that overlaps with the other supernatural creatures like zombies and werewolves, which both look great for what little they're on screen. The designs of everything in this movie, from the costumes, the creatures to the sets and locations, it looks wonderful and everything looks lived in. It adds to the credibility of this world. It makes everything feel quite grounded and realistic, but it still allows for the comedic side to shine through. This is a comedy through and through, unlike things like Shaun of the Dead, which balances humour, horror and drama to great effect. This movie is straight up a comedy, and it is very, very funny. I mean, it does still have a few speckles of horror and tension here and there, and a couple of jump scares, but this is very much a comedy first and foremost, with a real emphasis on the humour. It's very rare for a modern day comedy movie, in my opinion, to have so many jokes that land, but not only does this movie have so many jokes that do land, even after so many viewings of this movie, those jokes are still funny. I'm a big fan of slapstick and visual gags, and this has so many that I absolutely love, like the sequence where they're playing archery down the corridor, or where they interact with the werewolves and one of them decides to pretend to throw a stick and one of the werewolves tries to run after it. And my favourite one is when Vladislav is hiding outside someone's window and he's trying to hypnotise them to come to the window to let him in, and he's there going, "See me, see me." And the person inside is just oblivious, so he just bangs on the window, "See me." Plus, when Viago is doing a wine and dine for a victim, and he's putting down newspapers on the floor, he's got a handkerchief that he's putting on, and when he bites her neck, he accidentally bites an artery. Oh, I love that scene. Plus, What We Do in the Shadows has a ton of verbal jokes and quotable lines of dialogue that absolutely floored me. "When you are a vampire, you become very sexy. And what are we? Werewolves, not swearwolves." Some people freak out about the age difference and they wonder, what is this 96-year-old woman doing with a guy 4 times her age? But my favourite one is when they get asked why it is that they consume virgin blood. And excuse the language, I think of it like this. If you were going to eat a sandwich, you would enjoy it more if you knew no one had fucked it. The first time I heard that line, I had to pause the movie. It absolutely broke me. Anyway, the dialogue throughout this movie is really fun and snappy, and a load of it is improvised. So much so that apparently there's over 125 hours worth of footage that they captured for this movie. And they have said that they would like to upload it onto the internet one day, and I hope they do. And bear in mind, the runtime for this movie is just under an hour and a half, and that's nuts. It is honestly amazing how good and how funny this movie actually did turn out to be, considering just how much footage that they did film for this. And it doesn't feel either messy or disjointed. And as much as I would like to see that other 123 hours worth of footage that they made for this movie, I am so happy with what it is that we got. One aspect of this movie that I thought was really good, even 10 years on, is the effects. The visual effects in this movie are shockingly good, and a lot of it still holds up. There are some sequences where it is a little bit more noticeable than others, like the sequences involving bats or motion tracking, but some of it is really clever, like having the vampires walking on walls or along the roof in a very similar way to what it is that they do in Inception. Some of the transformations are really good, and there's some really decent wire work as well. And there's one bit that I still can't get my head around, and that's during a chase sequence. During this sequence, the vampires are chasing Nick, and he decides to lock himself in this small room. And on his back is his backpack. And next thing you know, he turns around, and then one of the vampire hands actually comes out of the bag and tries to grab him. So of course Nick freaks out, he grabs the bag, and then he throws it to the other side of the room, and the vampire's still like half out of it. I still don't know how they did it, but it's so good. There are so many clever effects that they do use in this movie, but because they do prioritise trying to do everything practically and for real, it does help this movie hold up. It really is good. And finally, the musical score from composers Plan 9. I'll admit, it's not my favourite soundtrack, but it is quite unique and it does fit this movie quite well. It's very quirky and all over the place and a little bit scattered, but it is fun, it is memorable, and it does mix together a lot of instrumental tracks. Plus, it does make sense considering that early on in the movie, you do see the vampires actually playing their own instruments, so I think that the reason why the soundtrack sounds the way it does is because it's meant to be that they are the ones providing it. But that's just my opinion. It is a fitting soundtrack overall. I do think that the main theme especially is really fun and catchy. The main theme for this movie is a song called You're Dead from Norma Tanniger, and it is the perfect choice for this film. They even use it in the TV series. Yes, for those of you that aren't aware, back in 2019, a TV series was developed by FX, and currently I think it's on its 6th series. Now personally, I don't think it's as good or as funny as the film, but I do think that it is 100% worth seeing, especially if you do love the film. It's a different set of characters in a different setting, but it keeps the same spirit and tone of the film, whilst also adding new layers and lore to the world, such as trolls, and my favourite being the energy vampire. And I personally think that the mockumentary format does work a little bit better for the TV series, and there's a lot more of a story that builds and evolves over time, and you get to know the characters a lot better. Plus, the amount of cameo appearances that appear throughout the series is really impressive. There are some huge names that appear throughout the series, and I am genuinely baffled how some of them came to be. So yes, as a companion piece to the film, I would highly recommend checking the series out if you can. Overall, this is a fantastically funny mockumentary that is a blast from start to finish. It's a brilliantly clever film that has a fun premise, a great script, and it takes full advantage of almost every idea. There may be one or two things that they could add or expand on in this, but I cannot deny how great and how funny this movie is. The characters are great, the cinematography is excellent, the effects are clever and well used, the makeup and costumes are perfect, the soundtrack is quirky and suitable, and the use of improv makes this feel far more believable and funnier. If you have never seen this film before, stick it on. I would honestly say that this is another must watch. It is so much fun, and I guarantee that you will have a great time with it. I absolutely love it, and I always find time to put it on over Halloween. So with all that being said, my rating for What We Do in the Shadows is a 9 out of 10. This is absolutely one of my favourite movies to put on at this time of year, and I absolutely loved getting to do it for this video. And I'm definitely going to have to take a look at those TV spin-offs as well, because I haven't seen them and I would like to. Well, I think that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video, and for Halloween as well. Again, sorry about how late this video was going out. And I was trying to get some other videos done as well. But if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and be sure to hit that notification button. If you have seen What We Do in the Shadows, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future rewind reviews you would like to see me do, let me know down below. There was one spooky movie review that I was planning on doing and releasing for Halloween, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get around to it, but I'll try and do it as soon as. And yes, it will have a proper intro. Not only that, it will be the longest one so far, so keep an eye out for it. But until next time, thank you very much for watching. Happy Halloween once again, even though it's November, and I'll see you in the next rewind review. See you guys.